Hey, what's going on, guys? So welcome to another Facebook Live. And tonight I'm going to have Danny Scollan join me. So let me just find Danny here and get him added. But Danny's a good friend of mine. And I've been talking with him quite a bit lately. And he's really taught me a lot. So I thought it would be really cool to bring Danny on so he can share some of his knowledge with you guys. Because, it's really interesting. I was talking to Danny today and I was saying to him, the more I learn about this, the more confused I get. So it's a very confusing topic because we're going to be talking about EMFs tonight. We're going to be talking about EHS, which is Electromagnetic Hypersensitivity Syndrome. And it's just so complex because we're dealing with these different frequencies, these different currents that we can't see. We can't feel them. Some people can feel them. So some people have an electrosensitivity to these things, but a lot of other people can't really feel them, and that's what makes it very complicated. And I was on the phone today with Danny. I had my my multimeter, and I was just asking him all these questions, and he did a really good job of explaining things to me, but it just kind of got to the point where I was getting more and more confused with more questions that I asked. So here, trying to find Danny here to bring him on. And he should be joining us in just a minute. But in the meantime, let me know where you're from. It's pretty awesome to get people from all over the world on these things. And there he is. What's up, Danny? How's it going, man?
Pretty good, pretty well. How can you see me okay?
Yeah, it's a little bit dark, okay, but I can see you pretty well.
Okay, yeah, I'm going to be doing this probably mostly in the dark. How are you?
I'm doing great. How about you, man?
Yeah, good.
Yeah, so I was talking a little bit about our conversation earlier today, how, I was asking you all these questions and I was just getting kind of more and more confused because it's such a complicated topic that we're going to be discussing. But before we get to that, Danny, why don't you share with everyone your story of how you went from just kind of like, a normal dude to kind of your discovery and how you got sick and how you turned things around to where you are today.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, and apologize for my voice. I'm just getting over the flu. Back in 2005, actually in 2000 I was in Chicago, but 2005, unbeknownst to me, I moved into a building with actually a radio tower and a cell mass on top of it. So it wasn't like a big cell array. It was just a mass. And I think at the time it was a 3G mass. I think AT&T was the provider. Our condo building got money from them and from the radio tower. Generated profit for them or revenue. Anyway, after about 3 or 4 years in that building, I just started to come down with some general stomach issues, like IBS issues and, brain fog and fatigue and whatnot. And at the time, I had no clue, except I knew that other people were actually, there were problems in the building, but I just thought it was normal or the status quo. But before this time, let me backtrack a bit. I worked for a pipe fitting outfit, and I did real estate, small time investment, commercial real estate in Chicago, and was on my phone a lot as well. Working many hours, 7 days a week, without vacation for up to a year and a half at a time. And so I was just a regular work-a-day dude. And
regular Joe.
Just a regular guy just trying to, make a living and contribute to his family. And anyway, I started coming down with some health problems, and just couldn't really figure out. I was in that building for probably 2 more years after I noticed, so a total of maybe 5.5 years. And it wasn't until 2014, and I was reading through some stuff, and it linked me to the neurosurgeon that you've had on, Dr. Jack Kruse, and he started talking about electromagnetic frequencies. And I fast forward, I had a consult with him, and he asked me some questions. He said, "Did you ever live?" You know, one of the questions, I don't remember if it exactly happened like this, but he asked me, "Have I ever lived near a cell tower?" He asked me a line of questions, and we were talking, and he said, and I said, "Yeah, I lived in a building with one on top of me." And he said, "And that's where your problem happened?" And he said, "Well, it's not, you know, it's not a mystery to me, not an enigma to me of what, you know, really was the linchpin." So anyway, yeah, so fast forward to now. I mean, I've done a lot to mitigate. First and foremost, I moved out to the country, and I'm not there currently at the moment, but moved out to the country, started
so
looking
you're in
into
Chicago, Danny, and then from Chicago you moved out to the country?
Moved to Florida. Actually, no, not right away. I didn't find out about this until about 2 to 3 years of being in Florida. So I was actually in Tampa. Another bad EMF spot, but not as bad as where I was. Anyway, yeah, maybe it was 4 years after I'd moved to Florida, and then I found Dr. Kruse's work. But you know, since that time, I you know, moved out to the country, implemented a lot of his protocols. I've seen a lot of improvement, but you know, it's one of those things, I think, it's really tough to overcome, electrohyper, because we're surrounded by it.
So Danny, you had IBS, different gut issues. Did you have any other symptoms?
My major symptoms, my major symptoms were brain fog, memory problems. Still have those today, unfortunately. But those were, and fatigue. You know, it's funny talking to some EHS sensitive people or people that are affected by electromagnetic frequencies. It's interesting to see, and I have yet to, I'm sure there are people that can make the connection, yet to connect certain frequencies and certain frequency signatures with certain ailments. But you know, it's stuff that I was probably predisposed to, and the EMF got me there really quick.
Right. Okay.
So, yeah, I can't remember where we were going with this, but yeah. So,
so you moved out of the country, started feeling better.
Yes. Yeah. And basically, I think, you know, more so implementing Dr. Kruse's protocols and some other stuff seemed to help me more than the mitigation. It was almost, it was akin to somebody with IBS doing mitigations, like akin to somebody with IBS doing, or stomach issues doing an elimination diet. You know, they're taking the source of the issue away, but not fixing the damage that had happened. And so I realized that I had to do a lot of fixing the damage that had happened, because I had spent a lot of time away from, you know, after realizing it, I had spent a lot of time, you know, out in the sticks. And while I did feel better, it wasn't like I was, you know, improving rapidly. I had to, you know, fix my health, fix, you know, the damage, the lasting damage that was done to my mitochondria, I guess. So.
Yeah. So what kind of things were you doing to help fix that and help repair it?
I mean, the sun is the biggest. The sun is the biggest. I'm at a point now where when I hit the summer here in Florida, at least this was the way it was last summer. I mean, I feel pretty damn good. You know, all of my EHS stuff goes away. but it comes back. I mean, I do know I just came back from Mexico, and I mean, I felt really good in Mexico, but coming back here.
Came back, you got the flu.
Right, exactly. To my defense, everybody's got the flu around here, it seems, but yeah, but you know, some of the stuff, some of the electrohypersensitivity syndromes, symptoms have started creeping back in, being that it's January, you know, so.
Yeah, so being in the dead of winter is it's a really challenging time for you. So,
well,
so
yeah,
Danny,
yeah.
Hey, so why don't you talk about how you got into kind of going into people's homes? You were measuring EMF levels and helping people to mitigate these risks that they were facing.
Okay, one of the first places I measured outside of my family's places was a chiropractor's office. I had actually turned him on to Dr. Kruse's work, but we were talking to a few people. Actually, there's a NASA scientist, Valerie Hunt, that was into talking about electromagnetic fields. I recommend that anyone who hasn't read her work, or she was into this, you know, back in the 80s and 90s. There's other people's work as well, but Valerie Hunt, she's a good one to follow up on.
Okay.
She saw the problem way back when, even before the ubiquitousness of wireless energy. But anyway, so the first person that invited me into his office and then his home was a local chiropractor. And he said, you know, and just because we were talking about it on my office visits, and he was interested in Dr. Jack Kruse's work. And so went in there, measured, you know, at the time I had a tri-field meter to measure magnetic fields. Well, really, it supposedly measures all three, but not really, to measure magnetic fields. And I had a cornet, and that's it, to measure radio frequencies. And he thought it was fascinating. And on, you know, on my, and he saw, you know, you should do this for people. And I thought, no, I'm not, you know, this is the last thing. I'm not a techie person. You know, if you know me at all, you know, I know nothing about computers, you know, or, you know, tech stuff. And so I kind of balked at it. But one thing he did, after I did the readings, was he bought the dirty electricity filters, the green wave filters, and which we could talk a little bit about this. Actually, there's still some confusion about them for me and to how effective they actually are. But anyway, I went back to him and he told me what he did, and I said, well, I didn't tell you to buy these green wave filters. And so I measured them, and I measured a small magnetic field coming from the filter. And you and I talked about this. You know, I looked at Michael Newart's stuff on dirty electricity filters and found out that they could be problematic. But anyway, fast forward, he was the one who pushed me into to doing this for other people, and I just started talking about it. And lo and behold, I actually started talking about it while working at a farmer's market. And
okay, so other people are selling Betsy's at the farmer's market. You're there with your meters and just kind of talking about EMFs and stuff.
Right. Well, not my meters, not at the farmer's market, but yeah, no, people were interested, and I started. It's funny because, or it's interesting because I started getting in with local firefighters, and then I realized.
Yeah, because they get exposed to a ton of EMFs, right?
Sure, and I realized, they're a huge canary in the coal mine. They, they have one of the biggest circadian mismatch jobs you can have. You know, working the night shift and all of the light exposure and the other waveforms of communication that they're exposed to during that shift. So yeah, and then go ahead.
No, go on. I'm sorry.
No, I mean, and then I just, coaching Little League football, I had somebody approach me who heard me talking about this and talked to them about it. I had somebody who You know, my son's a big surfer in where we are in Flagler Beach, and and so I started talking to some of the people there, and the word just started to spread. I started to meet people and go into their homes. Now, you know, I'll say that, look, I've got so much to learn as far as mitigation is concerned. I mean, you know, I was in Mexico meeting up at this at Dr. Kruse's member event, and I learned that I don't know as much. Well, I knew I didn't know a lot, but I learned that there was so much more to learn.
Yeah, it's such a deep topic, you know, kind of like we were saying earlier today, like the more you learn, the more you realize you don't know very much about this topic at all.
Yeah, I mean, dirty electricity is a big one. Sarah, I know she's listening. I don't know if Srihari's listening. But these guys, man, I mean, I knew about dirty electricity. You know, I could talk a little bit about total harmonic distortion and, you know, the fact that the AC grid running through our house acts like a huge antenna, especially the fact that we're surrounded in it by a cage. But I had no idea about things like dirty electricity being pumped back into the grid via neutral wires in our home. I don't know. I had no idea of this stuff. And
hey, so Danny, why don't you explain to the audience, you know, what is dirty electricity? Elaborate a little bit more on where it comes from. And...
Well, I was afraid you'd ask that, but you know, there's a lot of confusion as to there are different types of dirty electricity, but the one I'm most interested now in is, which the one I know least about, is the dirty electricity being pumped back into our power grid system. Srihari and Sarah Srihari talked a little bit about this, but Dr. Kruse also talked a little bit about this, but nothing really in detail. And I started looking up stuff from Dr. Samuel Milhelm while I was there in Mexico, and just interested to find out, like, for instance, you know, a lot of our so-called clean energies like solar and wind, they generate power, they generate DC electric power, and this has to be converted, and they use an inverter to convert it. And when that conversion happens, it supposedly pumps a whole bunch of dirty electricity back into the system. And you know, this is something that's not as easy to measure the way I was measuring it before, which is a little foolhardy, because I was only measuring certain aspects of it. Was I would take an analog AM radio and turn the dial all the way to the right, you know, to beyond the furthest AM frequency, so I was assured of a fuzzy signal, and then I would just listen for interference on certain things, and that's how I would test, like if I wanted to cut the electromagnetic interference with somebody's wired connection to their computer, and to make sure it was working. But there are better, more comprehensive dirty electricity meters out there.
Okay.
But
yeah.
I don't know. Go ahead.
Because hey, let me just ask you a quick question, more on a personal note. So my parents have solar, and I had read that the inverters crank out like a shitload of dirty electricity. Yeah. So I brought my tri-field out there, and I took it like right by where the inverters are. Their solar panels are like in a barn, like 100 yards from their house, or maybe 75. So I went out to like where the barn is and where all these inverters are with my tri-field, and I didn't really pick up too much stuff. So is that not the right tool to use to measure that?
You know, I don't know. You can try the method I tried with the analog radio, but they sell something called a Spion eSmog dirty electric meter. I think
Sarah has those. I think I saw one of Sarah's YouTube videos earlier today using one of those.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, interesting. I didn't see that. And there are other guys out there too. You know, some of the Jeremy Johnson, Jeremy spelled with an O, Jeromy Johnson, is, I believe, an electrical engineer, and he has a device. He has a gadget. Let me see if I have the name of it here. He has a gadget that he recommends. I mean, you could look his name up and see the device he recommends. I don't remember it offhand. Newart's got one that he likes. Michael Newart has one that he likes, and I don't know about Lloyd Burrell. I'm just throwing out the names of some of the bigger.
Okay. Yeah, I'll have to do some research, but yeah, very interesting. I mean, that's something that not too many people bring up about these so-called clean electricities.
Right.
Is a lot of them have a dark side too, and where I used to live, further out of the country, they were going to put some windmills up, and apparently a lot of people that live close to these windmills have they get migraines and really bad tinnitus and all different things. I don't know if it's from the frequency that the rotators put out, or rotors, whatever it is.
No,
but there was a big protest. I don't know what happened because I moved before it was finalized, but people were really fighting it hard.
No, fortuitous move on your part, because look up. There's a guy, Samuel Milham, Milham.
Yeah. Well, I know his work. So back in the 80s, he was the guy that discovered all these kids were getting leukemia from bad wiring in schools, right?
Interesting. No, I didn't know about this.
Yeah. So he's definitely a pioneer in researching EMFs and stuff like that. But I've read quite a bit of his research online. I don't have any of his books, but he's done some really good work. And, what's kind of interesting is when he first started doing his work, it was before we had Wi-Fi. It was before we had any of this wireless technology.
Right.
It was just our power lines in our walls. Okay. And this is actually a good transition, Danny. So I want you to talk about, because this is something that you've really taught me a lot about, is this thing, I think it's called jump conduction or jump connectivity, where these RF signals from Wi-Fi and from cell towers can jump to the power lines in your home,
right?
These whole new fields. So can you talk to that a little bit?
Yeah, simply put, and I couldn't explain it in detail to you, but and I think the phenomenon is known as jump conduction. I had heard about it a while back, but these copper lines behind your drywall or behind your wall, depending on what construction of your house is made of, act like a giant antenna. And these waves, these radio frequency waves, which different instruments can detect different frequencies riding on these wires, make it into your home via this. When I told you about that, I was talking to two members in particular about, turning off the breaker in their house. I had no idea. I knew that it was never wise just to turn off the breaker in your room, in your bedroom, and assume you were okay. To assume that you were, that you had lowered the electric fields in your room, because there are all sorts of other wires running through that room as well that you've got to kill too. And that's what my main focus was on that electric field, and then cutting down on that electric voltage, that stray AC voltage in your room. But I didn't know about the neutral still being connected to the power grid. I didn't know about this dirty electricity problem being forced back up through the neutral. And then I knew about, though, I think it's called the jump conduction. Don't quote me on that phenomenon, where the wires in your walls act like antenna, but it's that dirty electricity pumping back through to the part of your line that's still connected to the breaker box, or to the main power. That's a real problem.
Okay. So it's not good enough just to turn off the breaker for your bedroom. You got to turn it on for your whole house.
Yes, and even still, then
is that always true? Or so let's say your bedroom's in the middle of the house. You turn off the breaker to your bedroom, so none of the outlets work. But you're saying there's still power lines going through those walls that are hot, connecting to other rooms in your house.
That's right. So,
but let's say for example, your bedroom is in the corner. So the only wires going into there are to power your bedroom. There's no other wires running through those walls. Would that be good enough to just turn off your bedroom?
Yeah, I mean, theoretically, but I wouldn't bank on it. I measure for sure.
Yeah,
measure with a multimeter, you know, which you could turn into a body voltage meter. I know that not everybody is a fan of the body voltage meter. I like the body voltage meter, but I think Jeremy Johnson likes using. I like the body voltage meter too because it's, you know, a good meter to test electric field is going to cost you about $400. So I use a multimeter turned into a body voltage meter to do it.
Which is about $20. So
right.
You can do quite a bit with this little guy.
I'm sorry. Say that again.
I just said you can do quite a bit with that little guy.
Yeah. I love experimenting with that thing. Yeah, but yeah, you're right in that. You know, to just turn off the breaker to a room and assume that I've measured it, and I don't know why. And maybe it's the stuff that Dr. Kruse is talking about. Some of it that he was mentioning in the thread now, but some of it that he was talking about earlier in a thread. I never knew exactly why, but I would measure it sometimes where I would flip off the breaker to a room and actually get increased power, increased readings in that room.
Wow, so, very interesting. Very interesting.
Yeah,
okay.
There's a lot.
Some work to do.
Huh?
I've got some work to do. So
me too.
Danny
There's a lot I don't know.
Yeah, so Danny asked me to go in my bedroom and measure my bed. So you know, I took this multimeter and I was on my bed, and I didn't even realize this, but Danny asked, you know, what my bed was made out of. I've got like it's a wooden bed. It's a wooden frame with 4 like posts. And he's like, that wood from your bed can conduct electricity. So if there's stray voltage from the floor, it's conducting it up into the bed. And my mattress has metal springs in it. So it's actually conducting that voltage up to me. And I did a measurement. It was like 2.4 volts or something. But I have like a bunch of stuff on my computer. So I didn't want to test it with turning off the circuit breaker. But once I shut down my computer that's behind me, I'm going to shut off like the whole circuit breaker in my apartment, test it out and see if I notice a difference with that. But it just goes to show. So, yeah, I just want to make a real quick point to everyone. This stuff is so complicated. You can do some things to like mitigate some of the stuff. You're never going to be able to mitigate everything. So the key is you've got to be getting out in nature. You've got to be grounding so you can help your body discharge this stuff. Because we're dealing with higher and higher frequencies. So, for example, like the Earth has a human resonance of 7.83 hertz. So that's 7.83 oscillations per minute. And then, you know, so we went from like 1G to 2G to 3G to 4G. Now some cities have 5G. So 4G is what, like 28 gigahertz, which is like 28 billion oscillations per second. 5G is going to be in like terahertz or something. What is it? Terahertz, which is trillions of oscillations per second. So life has never been exposed to this before, and it's really hard to fathom, right? Going from like 7.83 oscillations per second to millions to billions to trillions. It's like, how does our body deal with that shit? So we've got to be getting out in nature. We've got to be doing trips down to Mexico. We've got to be, you know, grounding, getting in water, which is a natural Faraday cage. So
the thing.
So
the
Danny,
thing that you
I'd love it
mentioned,
if you shared some of your success stories that you've had by going into people's homes, doing these measurements, and just giving them some recommendations to change things, and then all of a sudden, you know, their kids didn't have asthma anymore, stuff like that. So can you share some of those stories?
So, well, going back first, I want to go back to what you were talking about with the wooden bed frame on the floor, getting that voltage. You know, the fact that you live, and so I have an up and down too. And when I'm on the second floor, when you have electrical wires that run through the ceiling of the first floor, that's on the ground of your floor, and so. You know, that's most likely what that frame is picking up from. But yeah, you know, If you still have that problem, there are some things that you can do, you know, putting something under the bed frame, moving the bed frame away from the wall. We could try a few different things. And,
Okay.
You know, beyond that, if any problems, you talk to an electrician. But
so insulating the bed frame from the floor, moving it from the wall to get it further away from the source of electrical fields.
Right.
Okay.
And but yeah, beyond that, you know, maybe there's something, you know, some short circuit issue or some problem, which I doubt. I really think that it's just the wiring and the shitty insulation we have between the floors. I mean, it's just plywood. You know, stop in between you and those wires. But yeah, back to. Oh, go ahead. What were you saying again? About the.
Oh, I was asking if you could share some of your success stories of when you've gone into people's homes, you've measured, you've given them some recommendations to make some changes. Hey, real quick, thanks so much for checking out my video, and I hope you're getting lots of value and learning some cool stuff. If you're having challenges with your health, I can help. The main thing I help my clients with is improving their energy at the cellular level. So I'm talking about your mitochondria. And what we know from the latest research is that 85 to 90% of all disease is caused by poor mitochondrial function. So when you fix your mitochondria, you improve your energy and everything gets better. If this is something that you'd like help with, there's a link to my calendar in the description below. Go ahead, you can schedule time for us to talk. And if it looks like we're a good fit, I'll tell you about my program. And if it's something you want to do, we can start working together. I look forward to meeting you. And now, back to the video.
Yeah, yeah, it's been interesting. It's been enlightening. It's been encouraging and frustrating at the same time. And I'll explain. So I have definitely, one of the stories I always share is, you know, I've shared it before in a video with one of the kids that my son played football with, and his mom came to me, and, you know, he was waking at night, wetting the bed, and had seizures in the middle of the night. And we made some modifications to his light and really just to the wireless stuff in there. She didn't go much further than that, although she could have.
Okay. Wait, so you made modifications to the light? What did that look like?
So basically, just she had a CFL, which creates dirty electricity, and also
okay.
You know,
so one of those curly Q looking light bulbs.
Yeah, that's right, and a flicker effect. But the color temperature of the light, the bright blue light, bathing down on him while he slept, because initially he was afraid of the dark. And,
so they left a fluorescent light bulb on all night
in his closet, the closet open.
Okay.
And
which also creates dirty electricity too, right? Just like that light bulb.
Yeah, and it wasn't doped. It was, you know, it wasn't in a dome or anything like that. It was just a light bulb plugged into a socket. And so anyway, I had them change out the lighting in their whole house. Had them change out the lighting there. And I had them. They didn't do anything with wiring or anything, but they turned off the router at night, and I had them move it as well, because where it was, it wasn't good for other reasons. But yeah, they've got a daughter in the house too that. I mean, I'm no doctor, but, you know, like shows subclinical signs of hyperthyroid, and she's not the only little girl that I've seen like that. But you know, I'll say that there are a few others, and then I'll go back and tell you why I'm a little frustrated though. That maybe it's not enough, and I started realizing this after a while. I had another woman who.
Hey, Danny, real quick, just for the listeners, because I know we have some kind of, you know, people new to this before. So basically, you changed out the light bulbs from fluorescent to LED
Oh,
bulbs.
I'm sorry. It's incandescent light bulbs.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm sorry. Yeah, incandescent light bulbs.
Yep.
You had to turn
And
off their Wi-Fi router at night.
yep.
So did you have them put it on a timer, or do they just manually turn it
No,
off?
they just manually turned it off. I gave them a write up on hardwiring and you know, and hardwiring, which we could talk about in a little bit, but hardwiring to cut out any electromagnetic interference that you would get. So you know, a low EMF hardwire setup. Trying to think. You know, one interesting thing I'll say is a lot of the stuff you learn from these environmental engineers doesn't incorporate. And I mean, you know, I don't want to I don't want it to sound like I'm just, you know, patronizing here, but they don't throw in a lot of the stuff that, because I know that you're familiar with his work as well. They don't throw in a lot of the stuff that Dr. Kruse talks about, you know, that also help offset this stuff when it comes to sunlight, particularly. But, you know, all of the other quantum principles that you can imagine throwing in, the stuff that you talk about, the stuff that you coach about, is, you know, a lot of the stuff that I talk about too when I'm with these guys. I feel that's a...
Hey, Dan, I want to point out the third thing you did. You moved the router further away, so distance is your friend.
Right, because they weren't turning it off till later at night after he went to bed. And I said, well, all right, if you're not going to do that, then we're going to have to reconfigure this setup. If you're not going to wire it, you're not going to turn it off when he goes to bed. You know, they turn it off when they go to bed, and then we're going to have to move it. And you would think that they would be all in. You know, that's part of the frustrating is like,
yeah, that's pretty serious stuff. The kid was dealing with seizures, bedwetting.
Well, the thing is those things, you know, stopped. But you know, who knows in the long run what other subclinical things are going on and what other things are down the pipeline. I mean, so you know, it would behoove everybody to go as far as they possibly could, but you know, they just saw that as the problem, and there's some issues with the problem, but
I mean, it fixed the kid's symptoms, so it's doing some help, right?
Yes, yeah, sure.
Change out light bulbs. They didn't do this, but you know, get a timer, plug your Wi-Fi into the timer so it automatically turns off. You don't even have to think about it. Hardwiring is better. Some people aren't willing to do that, but you know, baby steps.
Yeah.
A lot of times.
Yeah, exactly. And like I said, I had a lot of firefighters there. I have 4 firefighters that I've worked with, and one that I'm talking to, and they're the most difficult to work with, and they all have sleep issues. There's somebody as young as 36 who has horrible sleep problems, you know, from the effects of his job.
From being on shift, or it's from these, what's the network that, you know, emergency personnel are on?
Yeah, the Tetra communication. I don't know if there are other, they call them land mobile radios. They're like the frequency, similar to that of a decked phone, but obviously instead of being able to reach around your living room, they reach around the city, you know, maybe a 50
okay,
mile,
so
50
like a much higher power
radius.
density.
Right.
Hey,
so yeah,
Danny, so that just made me think of something. So when we have these higher power densities, that's what allows these different frequencies to kind of jump conduct and all of a sudden show up on our power wires in our house, blasting us with these new forms of dirty electricity.
Right.
Okay.
And to what power, what degree they come in, I don't really know. But yeah, so I've worked with a couple of firefighters, you know, making some headway with one, but this guy is really all in. He's a tough guy, probably late 40s, close to retirement. And a lot of these guys say the same thing, like, I don't know if I can make it. 3 years,
Wow.
6 years retirement. And they're
in their
saying,
40s.
and
They
they're
can't
like,
make it to retirement.
they all say the same. Well, I heard somebody say it, and I've asked some of them since, two of the others since, and they say that they're afraid that they won't make it to retirement. That's how bad off they are. But one guy in particular, who's all in, he did away with the dimmer switches in his home, changed out all the lighting in his house. We've hardwired his internet connection, multiple internet connections. He's let me see. He got the Aura ring to
so he undid some of your work.
Right, to decipher his sleep. I couldn't explain it well enough to tell him why, but I referred him out to read somebody's stuff, who's. Anyway, but he's making some pretty dang good progress.
Okay.
Doing what he's doing.
So tell us where his main symptoms and what he's like now.
So he's really sensitive to the lights. Go figure, because he's in those stupid lights, on every emergency call, at early hours in the morning. So that's one thing that has not changed, but his sleep has improved quite a bit.
Okay, that's huge.
That's huge. I think the EMFs have helped, but I think his doing some cold stuff, some cold therapy, cold thermogenesis, really helped him.
Cool.
He was having a little. He seems to be like his anxiety levels. He told me as last I haven't spoken to him actually in a couple months before I left to Mexico, but his anxiety levels had been improving.
All right, so Danny, are you seeing that a lot? Because there's like a shitload of people reaching out to me that are just dealing with major anxiety.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah.
The young
every
kids.
Day, someone's just like IMing me, like, "Hey, I've got anxiety. Do you have any recommendations?" But a lot of people seem to be dealing with like really bad anxiety these days.
Yep. The young kids in particular. I mean, not like, I mean, I see it. It's not like everybody's home that I've gone in to measure, is as forthcoming about their anxiety issues, but I can see it in a lot of, just generally in a lot of people around, and especially the young kids. I coach soccer, I coach football. My son's got a lot of friends, and I see the problems. I see the problems that especially the boys are having in school. And a lot of them are angst-ridden at such a young age. Yeah. I don't know enough about them to know, how their sleep is and all of this stuff, but that just always amazes me.
And they get put on these medications which are loaded in deuterium, and the problem gets worse and worse and worse. Right.
Yeah. This is the deuterium thing is I'm still trying to catch up to a lot of Jack stuff. I had to take the fire hose away for a moment, just to concentrate on other things. But I'm almost ready to jump back in.
Cool. So, any other stories of people that you've helped by helping?
Sure. Plenty of them. Plenty of them. Let's see. There was a woman who she's 70. Her and her husband are 70, and they unfortunately live in a home close to, I don't know what the voltage is running through these transmission lines in their neighborhood, but they're probably not the regular 25,000 volt lines running through. Maybe they're 50, 75, I don't know. Because after making sure to, and see the people, they spent the money to do it, not with me really, because I don't, you know, I really don't charge much to do this, just because I know little. I just go in and I just urge them to, you know, to basically speak with an electrician and speak with professionals. And after they went in, the electrician went in and didn't find any wiring problems in their home. I told him, I said, what I'm measuring is that power line that's running on the west end of your home. And so I had them move. He's got a big sprawled out home, and I had them move all the way over, which he didn't like the idea of doing it. You know, he's 7 years old, set in his ways, and
yeah, right.
But we've talked a lot, so I had his confidence, and he was willing to do you know, what I said and what I suggested. But his wife she's a breast cancer survivor, skin cancer, and now thyroid cancer. And so,
wow, breast, skin, and thyroid.
And she's got a lot of sleep problems. And I've been able to improve her sleep problems. Or
just to move where their bedroom is.
Not just that. No. We did the gamut. They you know, and they had an electrician come in and rewire, get rid of their dimmer switches, do everything that I suggested. This guy had, oh, go ahead. I'm sorry. I thought you were gonna.
No.
Oh, okay. So anyway, they decided to, and then there were other stuff, the lighting issues, dimmer switches, cordless phones. I mean, just basic stuff went through their home and just got rid of it all. There's a similar issue of somebody else, actually a personal friend, who they had six cordless phones in their house. 6 cordless phones.
Yeah, and those things are worse than cellular phones, right?
Right.
The amount of radiation they have, because it's not pulsing, and it's just
that's
like
right. It's constantly the base station is constantly emitting a signal to to send to the receiver.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, why they had to have, well, I know he's told me why they had to have 6 of them, but I told him he didn't need 6 of them. But anyway, but yeah, very, very similar cases actually between this guy and the case I just talked about. Let's see.
Hey, Danny. So, why don't you kind of share about like the next stage of your life, how you're exploring moving to Mexico, and for those of you that aren't like big followers of Jack Kruse, Jack's always telling people, sometimes you're not going to be able to biohack your environment. You're just going to have to move, and that's a hard message. Very few people are willing to do that. Danny is a person who is willing to do that. So, why don't you share about, you've been down in Mexico, like the past 2 months or something?
Yeah, almost 2 months. I feel like, well, I don't feel like, I know I have to do it, not that it's not necessarily a willingness. I have to do it, but I've been down
for the good of your health, right? Just so you can quality life.
My sons, it's I believe it's imperative.
Family.
Yep. And even though I'm in Florida on the East Coast in a good spot, not very dense population-wise here, EMF readings are not bad. Being in we're not really in a suburban layout, but not being way out in the sticks. I'm on the beach, but I know that the 5th generation cell phone technology is coming up that eastern seaboard of the United States. At least now I know from my trip from Mexico. I see Jack.
Florida sucks.
Well, we had considered moving to the Panhandle, so a less population dense area. And maybe 5G won't come for them for quite some time. But anyway, I was going around in Mexico, and I guess to fill people in. I don't know if they know. I don't know if you've talked about it before. But the reason I go to this spot is Dr. Kruse turned a lot of people on to the fact that this area has a higher magnetic flux, a higher natural magnetic field, and that helps offset my electrohypersensitivity. So
like, how do you feel? Like, so you're in Florida, you fly to Mexico.
Yeah.
What feels different to you? Explain that.
Well, let me tell you about the first time I went. I don't think I told you this story.
Yeah.
The first time I went was just on, reading Dr. Kruse's information and him talking about it. And
I gotta check this place out.
Yeah, and I brought my meters, and I get there. It's raining. There's a thunderstorm, so I didn't see any sun. Went into town, ate stuff I probably shouldn't have eaten. Walked to the hotel room. Didn't notice at first, but there was a cell tower, maybe a half a block down from where we were staying in the hotel. Nightclubs pumping music to the left and to the right, karaoke bar on one side, nightclub on the other side. The fields I were getting were literally the fields that I measured when I was on the airplane, and inside the airplane.
Oh, super high.
Where I was staying, around the street where I was staying. And I thought, this was a couple years back, and I thought, this guy is absolutely insane. There's no way that this place is healing.
So wait a minute. So you called Dr. Kruse batshit crazy.
Right. And I said, there's no way that this place is healing. And I woke up briefly in the middle of the night around 2 a.m., and I felt like I had melted to the mattress. Because with part of my digestive issues, I have autoimmune condition, I have joint pain and stuff like that, which is actually almost non-existent now, but I had it back then for sure. And, that stuff just dissipated. So, and I've been around to many different places in the Yucatan, and this is probably the strongest or one of the strongest places for this. But yeah, I went all over to less population dense areas. I thought, well, I'm going to go out to the West Coast and check out a place that called Yelapa that a friend had suggested. They didn't get electricity till 2001. They got wireless in 2011. While I was there, just asking around, talking to people, I had a chance to meet up with a guy that was responsible for bringing a newer version called long-range Wi-Fi into Yelapa. And
this is the guy that beamed it in?
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Okay.
This place is about 30 miles south of Puerto Vallarta. You can only get there by boat. It's a remote place. No roads lead there. Yet they're able to beam from 30 miles on top of a bank building, a tower on top of a bank building in downtown Puerto Vallarta, to a tower on top of the highest peak of that, or the high peak of this place, scramble it or send it down to a repeater, a microwave relay down at the bottom in the valley, and spread wireless all around there.
So they went from like having no electricity to all of a sudden having electricity to beaming in Wi-Fi.
Right. And now I don't know. I don't know how exactly this changes the game, because I started asking him questions about frequency, and he started to become suspicious, like I was trying to get in on his game of conquering the west coast of Mexico. But I assured him that I'm not, and he said, "Oh, no, it's very safe." I called them microwave frequencies. No, it's the very safe radio wave frequencies at the low end of the radio spectrum.
Not microwave, it's radio frequency. Okay. And so how'd you feel there with this Wi-Fi being beamed in there?
I felt pretty good. I felt pretty good. It was a very remote place, but one thing I did notice is that when they put the electric cables in the ground, or sorry, when they put electricity in 2001, instead of suspending it on power poles throughout the island, they decided to bury it, and they buried it like 2 to 6 inches under their sidewalks, right along the edge of the sidewalks. And supposedly they'd had some donkeys that we've talked about this, some donkeys that were electrocuted by the shallow depth of these power lines. And I felt that for sure.
So just kind of walking along, you could feel like a current going.
Well, not necessarily a current. So I think there are different ways people feel the hypersensitivity. I feel it more with maybe anxiety issues and stomach issues. It's probably my weak point. And
so avoid sidewalks in this part of Mexico.
What's that?
So avoid the sidewalks in this part of Mexico.
Right. And so, but I didn't know this.
Don't follow donkeys.
Right. I didn't know this until at the end of my stay there, when I ran into a resident, and I'm like, what's that? What are those black lines running? I just had no idea that they would have ever fathomed doing something like that. But so anyway, but yeah, went all around and realized that.
So you explored all over Mexico and kind of like found which places you reacted best to? Was that the whole idea?
That was the idea. It's not a perfect way to do things, but I did realize something, that even in some of the remotest places, they can bring this stuff in. So, I thought that was pretty interesting, but I didn't really get the specifics, the details on the specs of this stuff that they were bringing in.
So Danny, could you still measure like the strong magnetic field on the West Coast, or is that too far away from like the big crater in like the Yucatan?
Well, I don't have any instrumentation. I know that the ability or the instruments that are used to detect this type of native or natural magnetic fields are sensitive and expensive, but I use my body. But it's not like I said, not a foolproof thing. I was, the effects when you come from that part of Mexico are lasting to a certain degree, depending on how well you can hold those effects. And so I was coming from that place to this place, to the other places. So, but it wasn't anything. No, it wasn't anything like it was in the Yucatan.
Okay, so for to maximize health benefits of Mexico, it's got to be in the Yucatan.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there are remote places out there. I'm sure there are remote places out there that, because of the strong sun and the lower population density, that and the antiquated tech, or at least somewhat antiquated tech, you could probably receive a tremendous amount of health benefits from being in other places, not just this place. But yeah, this is what is definitely special about this place.
Okay, so you mentioned before you were like melted to your mattress. It sounded like that was a good thing, but it wasn't sleep. You were just in this very deep sleep.
Right, it was a good thing. I felt very relaxed. My body was at ease. There was no. I was in a deep delta wave state, or I don't know if I was still in the delta wave state, but a deep relaxed state. And I felt it for sure.
Okay. For sure. Yeah, that's what everyone seems to comment on, when they go to Playa del Carmen or other areas in the Yucatan, is that they just have like the most amazing sleep ever. Right.
And, and even though they don't know it or don't attribute it to that, I definitely know it to be true.
Okay. Hey, so anything you want to share? So Danny was also at the recent Jack Kruse membership event, Anything you want to share that you learned there?
I mean, there was so much. There was so much. I realized how little I knew. Like I said, with the dirty electricity thing, I mean, I'm still wanting to catch up and to learn about this. I think that this is the main reason why we have to get to a lower population dense area, because of this dirty electricity phenomenon, especially the stuff that's being delivered, by modern tech devices and by cell towers and smart meters and whatnot. So, I learned that, and I think I knew this already, but I didn't know why. Like I told you, when switching the breakers off in a house, why I was still measuring certain things in a room, but why people still felt stuff even when the electricity was off, just by the fact that they were inside that AC electric grid, inside that cage. They, still were feeling the effects of the dirty electricity. And I mean, I just don't want to throw names out there. Just, I didn't get prior permission, but Shri, I won't give his full name out. Sure, people could deduce who he is after just saying that. But he said there are other things that this guy is working on that goes well above my head, talking about him still getting through this Ethernet toner device, which is a device used to track Ethernet cables. So if you have a bundle of cables going from, probably usually used to more so in a workplace, bundle of
Cat5 cables,
Cat7 cables, whatever, Ethernet cables going from one place to another, and you need to identify a certain cable in that bundle on one end of the one room and the other end of another room, and you can't see, you can't tug on it or whatever to find out which wire it is.
Okay.
I think it measures the voltage on the line. I'm not sure. I think that's what it does. But he's able to use it in another way, and he's actually, and I know I'll probably butcher this, but he's actually measuring maybe an imprint of the 60 hertz frequency on that line, and it's like, okay.
So it's jumping from the power line to the LAN to the Ethernet cables.
Yeah, and it could be from the power line, or it could be from the modem itself, because I think the modem also uses switch mode power supply or something to convert some sort of inverter, and it's creating dirty electricity too. As a matter of fact, a good way, especially the high speed ones, a good way you can lower that electromagnetic interference coming from the router is to lower the speed, the megabit speed of your router, to lessen the electromagnetic interference coming through that Ethernet cable. But I guess, but anyway, he's I don't know. That's the scope of what I know. But he has a member in his family that with electrohypersensitivity, and he's trying to figure out why it is that they still react to these things even when the power is completely shut off. That was probably that was the biggest thing. That was the biggest thing. A lot of little things. That, I wonder why Dr. Kruse doesn't talk about it more. But I'm sure there are reasons, and maybe he will. But all of the other things that the industry and the industry and the insurance companies and all these guys know the effect of this stuff, and we're left in the dark.
So you've got to do your research. So Danny, I appreciate you sharing your knowledge, but it seems like every day I see something new from some doctor just coming out and saying this stuff is harming people. Published research. so much information out there, but people are choosing to listen to industry. So in industry, you've got lobbyists, you've got these paid PhDs that will go out, they'll swear up and down, this stuff is not harming people, blah, blah, blah. But you've got other doctors that don't have a financial interest coming out and saying, no, this stuff is really messing people up in a very bad way. So I want to encourage everyone, do your research. Don't just listen to Danny. Don't just listen to me. Go out there, do your research. There's so many books. You have no excuse not to be able to look into this yourself, and try to find like a Danny in your neighborhood that has some of these meters. Get your own meters. Start to measure these things. There's lots of low-hanging fruit. It does get very complicated, but there are things that you can do. But you've got to mitigate this stuff. You've got to get out in nature. If you live in a city with 5G, you've got to move. Pretty much, like if you're really healthy, you might be able to get away with it now, but at some point, it's going to catch up with you. You're going to feel the effects, and don't put yourself in a situation. Don't put your family in a situation where you wait too long, where it's too late, and somebody ends up, with cancer. And it's heavy stuff. It's deep stuff. It's a very inconvenient truth, and a lot of people are going to have a rude awakening to this in the coming months, in the coming years. So, Danny, anything else to share with the audience?
Well, yeah, a few things I wanted to say. Recently they okayed the installation of 5 new towers in my county. That will come online probably sometime in 2019 under the guise of beefing up the emergency network communication. And I'm thinking that that it seems awfully convenient that this infrastructure buildup is happening in the time of the great 5G race between Verizon and AT&T. So it's almost like they're piggybacking on taxpayer dollars. So not only are they, bringing some wicked Neolithic conditions and diseases your way, they're doing it with your money. So I guess think of that. And then the other thing I wanted to say is that in this county commission meeting, or going to a county commission meeting next Monday, just to talk about this stuff and maybe to see somewhere, somehow, there's an in, but really I just want there to be more disclosure. And I wrote out a list of things that cities and, around the world are doing. It's not an extensive list, but there are many places out there putting in regulations, some that won't really amount to anything, but people around the world are paying attention to this. People around the world are starting to get clued in. And I'll tell you what, I think, we can't really depend on the scientific community to be able to come through, to have their message come through. It's going to be distorted. It's got to come from the people. And, again, not permission to throw out anybody's names, but, these guys that started the EMF Warrior website, Compton and Bowden and David Blake. I mean, it's, I think that I call it the Restovac spirit. There was a documentary I saw a long time ago when I was a kid, actually, about Restovacs. They're child slaves in Haiti, and this guy was pumping in money or trying to get people to pump in money and to help him overcome this or fight this childhood slavery that was so rampant in Haiti, or that is still so rampant in Haiti. And he realized he was a childhood slave himself. He was, he had been rescued. and he realized that nobody else was going to do it. That's, you know, that it was him, that it's that, and I call it that restovac spirit. And, you know, these guys, Blake and Compton and Bowden, these guys they have that spirit. They have that spirit. And, you know, I hope some way I can contribute, but I look to guys like that to, you know, to really make a difference going forward. I expect to see some big stuff come out of their end. Well, that's
they're doing some really great work. They've got a great podcast. They've got a great website, very informative. But Danny, I could not agree more. It's got to be a grassroots movement. People have to get involved. People need to give a shit and stop watching Netflix and go to like a county meeting when they discuss this stuff. And you'll be pretty amazed at kind of like the lack of interest from a lot of people. But get your neighbors involved, get your family involved, start to talk to different people. But this is really serious, and I think it's a lot more serious than people really know or are willing to admit. So, you know, share this video, help us get the word out by sharing this and letting your friends see it. And some people will say, you know, these guys are freaking crazy, and other people will be like, you know what? My kids have like suddenly gained weight. They don't sleep well. They have anxiety, you know. Maybe these guys are onto something. So talk about this stuff. Don't be afraid to talk about it and spread the word. Do your research. Hey, Danny, there's something I wanted you to bring up. I totally forgot. But talk about the danger of being wealthy today.
I've had the privilege of measuring homes, some multi-million-dollar homes, and the amount of electromagnetic frequencies that money can buy is astounding. And these guys had it. But it's unfortunate. It's you know, there's one case in particular that it's sad. It's a sad case. You know, these guys were doing everything they thought. I mean, when you know they were doing everything they thought in their power to overcome their children's problems. The boy is on the autistic spectrum, and they don't see any issues with the girl. But this is also another case where I see maybe some subclinical hypothyroidism. Again, I'm not a doctor. Hyperthyroidism, I'm not a doctor. But going on with this little girl, with this 3-year-old little girl. And I go in, measure their place, off the charts, going through. I mean, it's astounding. I mean, I could have spent days in that place trying to figure it all out, and I couldn't do it in the end. Actually, I couldn't figure it all out for them, but I helped them lessen it. But they had nanny cams all over the place. All the smart appliances, all the smart gadgets that you could imagine. Everybody had, in the family, had an iPad. You know, then they were always on the iPads, and it's just astounding. If you were to take a meter, go into a place like this, and actually see the output on these meters from the energy that's in those environments, and knowing what I know about them, it's crazy. It's crazy. It's crazy to think that they're all sick. The parents too.
Yeah.
It's crazy to think that that there isn't more going on actually, but it's you know, it's bad enough. But
right.
Yeah, this stuff is very real. Very real.
Yeah. And very few doctors really understand it. Very few doctors are able to diagnose it. You know, it's interesting. Matt Maruca, I interviewed him. I did a Facebook Live with him a couple weeks ago, and Matt was talking about a kid he met, very wealthy. His family did like a lot of development in the Hamptons, and this kid had all these different issues. They took him to the best doctors money could buy. None of these doctors were able to help him. This 18-year-old kid Matt Maruka went out to their house and just kind of schooled the family for like a couple hours and explained to them exactly what was going on. And they had been dealing with it for so long, and Matt had dealt with the very same thing, and everything he said to them actually made perfect sense.
Yeah, that is one interesting kid that you mentioned there, Matt Maruka. He definitely has that Restovac spirit that I'm talking about. He'll definitely also be one of those trailblazers moving forward. And I'll tell you a funny story. I'm actually waiting for some blue blockers in the mail. Actually, I'm waiting for my son's blue blockers, and I want to try on his frames to see if I like those frames, so I can order blue blockers from his company for myself. But when we were there in Mexico, we were lucky enough to hang out with him, and he went out to dinner with us one night, and my son's sitting at the table with his blue blockers on. He's got Swanwicks. And
Okay.
he's got other ones too that he'll wear at home, the UVEX, but these are, the ones he wears for going out. And I knew they weren't optimal. I usually wear the UVEX as well, but now I've got some cheaper version, or some not as effective version going on. But anyway, he put those glasses on my son, the 550s, I think, the reds. And I didn't notice, but 10 minutes later I look up, or 10 minutes later I notice, and he's his head's down on the table. He fell asleep.
He passed right out, huh?
He passed out. It was his melatonin release, and that's how effective his damn glasses are. And
these are from Raw Optics, which is Matt's company. So these are the 550 tenths. I used to wear the UVEX ones, which are 500. And that extra 50, so this blocks out up to 550 nanometers of light. That extra 50 makes a big difference. And I've noticed an improvement in my sleep. So, definitely check out rawoptics.io if you haven't yet. And if you're on my email list, I actually have a coupon code where you can save 20%. So if you haven't signed up yet, make sure you sign up, and I'll be sure to get you that code so you can save 20% on your custom tinted glasses. And also, that was Matt, super high energy kid, very smart kid. But it just goes to show that you can go out, you can start to learn about this stuff, and you can have a huge impact on people's lives. So some of the best trained doctors were not able to help this kid. And an 18-year-old kid was able to help one of his peers, basically, just by learning this stuff. So go out, get educated, start to learn this stuff. Ask why do these guys wear these orange glasses at night? Start to learn about this stuff. Start to read about it, and teach your friends, teach your family, and they're going to have awesome results, and they're going to love you for it. So it's one of the best investments you can make for yourself personally and for those you care about.
And he definitely, like I said, he definitely has that Restovac spirit. I mean, he's somebody who's overcome, most of his issues as well. I mean, he's a kid, a millennial, dealing with the issues, or, had dealt with the issues that millennials deal with, the sleep and anxiety and all of these crazy issues that these young kids are dealing with. And he was smart and conscious enough to do something about it. But definitely support this guy, because he's going to be a trailblazer, and he's going to save a lot of asses.
He's going to do big things in this world.
Yep.
Awesome. Hey, well, Danny, anything else you want to share?
I just wanted to throw a few names out there, that, for the people who are confused, maybe there are some newbies out there looking for a place to start, and maybe we can put them in the thread notes, or I could do it later. But Michael Neuert, Sam, Neuert, Sam Milham, and Jeremy Johnson, and Lloyd Burrell. I mean, these guys are just, start reading into some of this stuff. And like you said before, the more you learn, the more you get confused. I think the more I learn, the more I realize that mitigating in in a populated area or in a big city is going to be more and more of a challenge, and maybe even an impossibility. So yeah, take that into account. Take that into account. You can't completely hack your way out of a horrible environment.
Right.
So
cool. Well, Danny, I want to thank you for joining me tonight and sharing your knowledge. And I look forward to talking to you again, because every time we talk, I learn something new, and sometimes I get a little more confused. But that's a good
Me
thing.
too.
You keep me curious, and you keep it interesting. That's for sure.
Yeah, me too. I'll add some notes later on that in the thread on the low EMF wired connection, and maybe a few other things I wanted to say that I've forgotten about already.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot to cover, so I'll have you on again just to cover some more stuff. But
Okay.
Hey, thanks everyone for tuning in. If you like this, give us a like, share this on your wall, share it with your friends. And coming up, I'm going to have Rob Hamilton on next week. So Rob is a former ER doctor turned anti-aging doctor. So he's going to be sharing some of his knowledge. He's another member of Kruse's site. So another one of those, those weird guys that wears orange glasses at night. So Danny, I'll talk to you soon. Everyone else, take care.
Thank you.
Have a great night or a great day, whatever time it is in your time zone. And we'll see you guys later.
Take care.
Hey, you too, Danny.